Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back for our fourth Event Virtualization Summit on the most inspiring and dreadful events. We're here today talking to a wider variety of brands to really get a perspective on not just what motivates and inspires business leaders and marketers, but also the consumer side as well. And for that, we've partnered with and are doing this in collaboration with MadCon NYC, led by Carlos Rodriguez. Carlos?
Hey everyone, I'm the event director for MadCon NYC. We like to call it where marketing and digital meet. And our event is this December, and we're super psyched to be doing this in collaboration with our partners at Ingo. And now I'd like to introduce our featured panelists. And oh, have we got a lineup of panelists for you today. Let me first start by introducing Orson Francesconi. He is the Managing Director of Financial Times Live. We also have Shelley Zalas, who is the CEO of the Female Quotient. We have Joey Graziano, who is the VP of Events for the NBA. Next, we have Stephanie Rivkin, who is the Director of Partnerships for Google. And finally, rounding out the panel, we have Travis Petershagen, who is the Director of Digital Experience, Events, and Production Studios at Microsoft.
Thank you, Carlos. I'm really excited about that panel as well. They're great conversations. And for everybody in the audience, please submit your questions during the live session starting at 12:30. We will get to those questions, discuss them amongst the panel, and we love that part. We love the opportunity for the audience to give back and hear your input and feedback. So in the live chat, please tell us where you're from, tell us what your concerns are, tell us what you love from the panel. And to kick us off, we'll now do the 5 panelists discussions that were pre-recorded over the last couple of days. Great. So Orson, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thanks so much for agreeing to join us and talk about the most dreadful and inspiring experiences. But before that, give us a little bit of your background.
My background, Michael, I am the Managing Director of FT Live, which is the Conferences and Events Division of the Financial Times. But my background has always been in B2B conferences and then exhibitions, primarily working for media players such as the Daily Mail Group and Haymarket Media, and I'm now at the FT. But I originally started in a content function of events, so researching and writing conference programs, and then worked my way into general management. And I joined the FT at the end of November. And of course, the world is a very different place to what I thought it would look like when I took this new job. So a lot of fun and games.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You basically took the job and jumped right into the world of virtual.
Yeah, so the day I was due to present my 90-day strategy to the board was the day when the lockdown started in the UK. And so that strategy, which is a kind of live event strategy, obviously never got presented and it's still in the drawer. And then our world has been thrown upside down, but we have some very exciting opportunities ahead of us. And in fact, we've already started playing in the digital space. So it's actually quite an exciting time.
Tell us about the best, most inspiring digital experience you've seen.
The one that really hit home for me was in some stage in April, the Metropolitan Opera in New York ran an event called the Met Opera Gala, which was a opera gala on a Saturday evening. And they connected about 40 or 50 opera singers from all over the world. And of course, liking opera and being on the Met Opera's mailing list, I got the invitation to join the Met Opera Gala. And it was pretty incredible what they did. And that was kind of a little bit of the brainchild of what the Global Boardroom then became. I mean, the idea started before, but the execution was very much influenced by the Metropolitan Opera in New York. So I think, like every other event professional, in March, I threw myself into a discovery phase of what is out there in terms of digital event platforms, right? And so I'm sure yourself and others on this event call, watching this event, we all kind of started Googling frantically digital conference platform. And I think I probably spent the following 4 or 5 weeks in demo calls with digital event providers. And I think I counted them. I must have been on about 22, 23 different platform calls. And it was a grueling experience, and I can only describe it. You go in with lots of hope and expectations, and you think this is finally going to be the one you want or you need, and you come out the other end of the demo call, and one more time you've been disappointed because what was promised at the beginning of the call, of course, doesn't get delivered in the demo. Oh, well, that piece will work just in another 6 months' time when we spend £2 more million of development, but don't worry, it's coming really soon. And so it was quite an interesting experience because, you know, a lot of people in the events industry don't come from a tech background, right? And so I know that a lot of event people are struggling because suddenly you're thrown into these demo sales meetings, and unless you know how to ask the right questions and how to really scratch beneath the surface, and a lot of it, to be honest, as you will know, is to do with how these systems, add value and deliver value to your customers, but also how they integrate with your current systems, right, and platforms, right? And the integration and the sticking together of all the different bits is essentially, I think, what can provide you with your competitive advantage, right? So, you know, we call it the tech stack, right? We now, I think, suspect most people on this call realize that there isn't a one-stop shop solution, right? And you have to plug together lots of different things. And plumbing together tech is actually tricky. It can be expensive. And if you work in events, it's not the kind of thing you do on a daily basis, right? And so suddenly you're having to reinvent yourself as a kind of tech entrepreneur, where you're getting Michael's product, you're sticking it together with this other product, and then you're integrating it with Salesforce, and then you've got a front-end website, and then you've got an accounting platform. And you go into these meetings thinking, oh, I'll just buy a solution off the shelf, and very quickly you realize, well, that's just not feasible. And so it's just a lot harder than people thought, and I'm sure a lot of you guys share the same experience.
Shelley, as you know, it is an absolute honor and pleasure to have you here. Can you please tell everyone a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the Female Quotient if they don't know?
Oh gosh, how much time do we have? I'm Shelley Zales, the CEO of the Female Quotient, and we're all about advancing women, advancing equality across race, age, gender, intersectionality, LGBT. You know, really, how do we create a more equitable world, a more equitable workplace?
I want to start off by asking, you know, and you would have seen, and our audience has seen this in the very title of this particular virtual panel, of what are great, fantastic, and extraordinary virtual experiences, and what for you are the key components that make up a successful and brilliant virtual experience?
Wow, you know, well, for us, because we were completely in real life, we have pivoted to in virtual life. So IRL meets IVL. And for us at the beginning, it was an or. We didn't have an option. So we, within 24 hours, became virtual experts. I think we've hosted over 170 plus conversations over the last 3 months. So really very heavy in content, most importantly, because equality never stops. It really is a business imperative, and equality is an essential. And so we will very intentionally be integrating virtual now in everything we do, mainly because it has been incredible for access. You know, when you go to conferences, it's the people that are privileged to be able to attend a conference. The access for all has been incredible. We also found that on Zoom, you have 25 tiles. If you want to engage, don't have more than 25 at one time. You can have audience engagement, you know, using chat and Q&A.
Is it then a matter of, like, when you think about audience and engagement and 25 or larger, like having two different groups here, how do you think about, how have you integrated networking and the ability to interact as well?
For us, we like to stay ahead, and we like to keep it interesting. I think our Zooms, I mean, people are in Zoom overload, so I think our conversations are very long, especially you can't just think about that you are the only Zoom someone is doing or watching in a day. If it was one and done, great, knock yourself out. But it really isn't. You know, people are on, you know, upwards of 10 Zooms. They just want to get up and get out. So I love a half an hour conversation with maybe 10 minutes of questions. So I think we're going to start seeing the time increments shrink and be more focused, you know, get right to it. I also think we're going to start seeing more virtual, become more virtual.
I love the point, I love both points, but the point about shorter and briefer, one of our other guests, one of our other panelists, which we'll get to talk to in a little bit, they took a session that normally on their YouTube session that normally would be an hour or two and condensed into 20 minutes for the virtual version. So that was really fascinating because I think a lot about Aaron Sorkin and the really punchy dialogue you get with West Wing. If you think about those things they just are so engaging, riveting. How have you helped the people that you've been moderating and speaking to and hosting? How have you helped them become punchier and more to the point in what they're saying and what they're talking about?
Well, if you think about digital content and attention span, I mean, it's all punchier and it's all bits and bytes of content. Linear television is one thing and in person is another, but digital, we're not just migrating content from offline to online. You've got to make it relevant for, the media that you're putting it in. I think that I give an A to everyone moving in this direction and staying engaged with their clients, with their customers. A lot of people just sat out and are waiting and watching and now just trying to get in the game, and it's a little late. I think we're all in for a new reset, period. I think that it's just going to be a reset of how we do business, and that's why I said, for me, it's an action. We are creating a more equitable future for, our next generation and all generations to come, as well as within the workplace. We have opportunity right now to make choice, not just repeat status quo. We could get rid of the junk in the trunk and put new stuff in. And I think that's, what we have the ability to do right now. And I think that that's an amazing silver lining. And we are really optimistic, we're really hopeful, and we're really excited about it.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Joey Graziano, who is the VP of Events for the NBA. Joey, why don't you tell everyone just a little bit about yourself and what you do there at the NBA?
Yeah, so no, I appreciate. Thank you for having me. I'm incredibly excited to be here. So I work on our event strategy and business development at the NBA for our global events team. And part of that is deciding what types of events we run, where we run them, how to deliver the different monetization models that make sense for our global event strategy, how to light up our fans across a number of different mediums. And I'm pretty jazzed up because I get to do it for an incredible company around the world.
That sounds awesome. So interesting role you have there at the NBA. And so kind of getting to the crux of kind of one of the things we want to speak about today is, and feel free to use your own examples too from the NBA if you want. But one of the things, of course, everyone listening to know is what actually makes a great virtual experience? What are the characteristics, in your opinion, that actually makes a virtual experience compelling, fantastic? And do you have any personal examples, again, of either ones you've done or ones that you've experienced that you can share with everyone?
Yeah, I think it really starts with thinking about the reasons to believe in it. So often when I think about the virtual experiences and the time crunch that everybody felt like they were under in the wake in particular of COVID, there felt like this was this big rush to just replace something that was going to be live with virtual. And what I felt early on was you just got lectures. Like I thought I was back in law school or undergrad again. I was just being lectured at by the person who I thought I was about to deliver or have an immersive experience with. And so I think anything I've seen that's been really good has given somebody a reason to choose that over Netflix, to choose it over what else is you can watch on television. And so I think what fundamentally makes for a great virtual event is what makes for a great live event, is that you've given a person a reason to get off the couch. What an irrational decision, especially today under the COVID world. It's completely irrational to get off the couch. And if you've got to give your end consumer a reason to do that. And I think the people who are doing this best are starting with that question. And so I saw, for example, a K-pop concert that got almost 2 million views, or I've seen what Fortnite has done on some of their concerts. I think those are the people who are doing it best, because what they're doing is giving their consumer an experience and a product they actually want, not a replacement for something that they thought they were going to get. And I think that's a fundamental difference.
You're envisioning a world where, depending on who my fantasy team is, or depending upon who my favorite players are, I'm actually looking at the game from a different perspective. I'm getting a different set of video, text, highlights as I'm watching the game.
Yeah, and I mean that's already going on. So I mean, if you think about right now, and you watched what the Washington Wizards offer some nights where they offer alternate broadcasts that are focused on sports betting, and so you think about that sort of being an audience of people that are going to want to view the game potentially from a completely different angle, highly engaged, but one that maybe they want to understand, how spreads change, how particular plays impact. We've seen some of our very hardcore basketball fans want access to how the plays are drawn up, and they want to see a view that is highly focused on on sort of the analytical part of the game. We've also seen other viewers who are more focused on sort of like the Twitch part of the game, the interactive nature between you sitting at home and your broadcaster, and wanting to know that they can interact with the people who are calling the game or the play-by-play announcers. And so we've gone into that space, and I think we very much believe in that. And I think the challenge is thinking about how do you do it at scale. So how do you deliver that level of customization such that the end user can have more control of what he or she sees, but at the same time, your production costs are not at a place where you're producing a separate feed for every one of your viewers.
That's interesting, because as you were talking about, and you kind of like your first lead off word when you gave that answer was personalization. Do you believe, not just for the NBA, but for regardless of the event, that personalization is going to be a key factor long term? And what other things do you think are going to be long term changes?
I mean, I certainly think so. I mean, we all have one thing in common as human beings, right? We all love to talk about ourselves. We all love to think about sort of that I'm special, right? I'm a special little flower. I'm unique. I'm different than everybody else. And part of that, as the people who are producing events, is that's your job, is to make all of your users feel that way.
We're talking about an industry that it's so easy to get distracted right now. All these people trying to produce all this content, having never done it before, they're chasing their tails in a lot of these situations, as opposed to doing what you're saying. Focus on an authentic person with a good story for that audience. And like the bells and whistles are great; they can add a lot of value. But if you focus on that first, everything else falls out.
Yeah,
I think it's a great story for our audience. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a thing I call them reasons to believe. And so anybody who wants to like pitch me a new business in our department, tell me what's my reasons to believe in this. And I start with I'm on the couch. Like, why am I getting off of it? And if you can't tell me, and it's got like those reasons to believe certainly need to be financial, but ultimately as the end story, that like they need to also be the things that are going to get me to either turn the channel, or to go from my couch to my computer, or to eventually get in my car and drive someplace. Yeah. And if we don't have those, if you don't start with those, I think we get lost, and we get lost quickly as we're just starting to chase.
I think it's also easy to
cool question.
It's easy to forget about that. I've heard the same thing. I think one old boss I had used to say, "Why should I give a shit?" We've heard that, but I think it's so easy to forget to ask that when you're thinking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, especially when many of us are in this world of like make goods, where we had a partner who had an obligation, and it's like, I don't want to have to give back that commitment. And so now I've just got to rush to get something up so that I can fulfill X contractual requirement, or fulfill Y opportunity that I committed to pre-COVID. And I understand that. I mean, we have those same business pressures, and they're real. But as this progresses, I would say, listen, instead, let's go back to what made us special to begin with. And if we do that, the business opportunities will flow from it, because people are going to want to come back. And what they're not going to want to feel is you check the box.
It's my pleasure to introduce Stephanie Ribkin from Google. Stephanie, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks so much, Michael. Hi, my name's Stephanie. I'm a partner lead in the food and beverage vertical at Google. So I work with various food and beverage advertisers to help them best represent themselves and reach their next customer across YouTube and Google platforms. In my past life before Google, I worked with a variety of CPG and other brands, including PepsiCo, including Procter and Gamble, Molson Coors, and I helped them in various ways, one of which was planning live events, whether internal or external, to reach new customers, to figure out how they can best represent themselves in the cultural landscape. And it's been really interesting seeing those brands take their live events and figure out how to make them digital in this new normal.
What makes for a not wonderful experience, for a painful experience?
No one's perfect right now. We're all getting used to this new space. We're learning every single day. So tech issues are completely understandable, but there are certain tech issues that are avoidable. So, if you lose internet or you cut out for a minute, everyone gets it. You log back in and figure it out. But having a bright light source rather than being completely in the dark, or having light streaming in from behind you so your facial features and what you're doing are not visible, are less forgiven. And even if it's not a proactive individual saying, I don't want this anymore, it's an easy way to lose someone's attention subconsciously if they can't see and interact with you as they would like to. I've seen the most success, and hence the least success on the other side of this, when people are really thinking about how to plan for virtual. It's not about taking an event that was supposed to happen live and putting it in a virtual landscape. We need to be thinking from day one when we're planning these events about the fact that they're virtual and how we can best represent the content we're trying to communicate in this new landscape.
The three most important characteristics or things to do to create a successful virtual experience. And do you have an example, again, of a virtual experience that's like, wow, knocked my socks off?
Three most important things. Carlos, how do you feel about 5?
You know what? Let's do 5.
All right, we'll go with 5. So a couple I already mentioned, but I want to make this really simple and straightforward. So have that agreement, build that trust with your viewer ahead of time, telling them what to expect. How long is this going to be? Whether it's going to be live or recorded or a combination of the two. What platform are we using? How should I best prepare myself to be a viewer? That's part of the two-way agreement. Build for virtual. So when we're thinking about building for virtual events, we have to think about the fact that someone is probably sitting at a desk or on a couch, where they're coming from, what they're ready for, and build to that virtual experience. Number 3 is engage the audience. Figure out ways to hold space for audience engagement, whether that's something you're asking them to do or asking them to type in. Keeping your audience engaged will keep them ready for the next thing and excited to build on what you're offering them and take it with them after the session. Number 4 is have a wow factor. I'll get back to this in a second. And then 5 is, I think the real missing piece that we haven't seen across the board is engaging the audience. What's the best way? Sorry, I mentioned that already, but networking, allowing for people to engage with each other. So we have a chat feature, but I think this is still really an open space for a go-getter to swoop in and figure out how to build the opportunity for the audience to engage with each other, make those connections, and draw opportunities forward after the event. So obviously there are budget restrictions when it comes to what type of event you're holding. If anyone isn't familiar with Cameo, it's a really cool new company, actually based out of Chicago, where you can go onto their website and find a celebrity or person of interest and ask them to deliver a message to someone that you want to send it to for a birthday or an anniversary, or just to cheer them up, or perhaps for the beginning or end of a meeting, or middle if you want to keep people engaged at that point too. So check that out. It's a fun way to introduce something new into the environment.
How do you connect those two worlds of value for the audience and value for the brand?
I think right now, as I said, everything is kind of about this mutual benefit of keeping in the know, learning, engaging, and content is always the core of what's at stake. So I'm not even going to log into your meeting if I don't think that the content is going to be beneficial to me.
Is the future virtual, physical, or both? Do we end up in a world where we go back to all physical events, or do we end up with both?
Michael, I sure hope we do end up in a world where we go back. I definitely think, though, that it's going to be a hybrid. Our future is absolutely a combination of the two. It's just dependent how much we stay virtual and how far we swing back to physical.
It's not a replacement or even a competitor. It's just a whole new thing that we're just exploring.
It is a whole new thing. And this whole pandemic has forced us to embrace it to the point where we're like, this is hugely valuable. We need to continue to do this. It's not going to replace, it's going to complement what we have face to face. Right? If anyone wants to get me a cameo message from literally any of the Real Housewives,
they're all on there.
All of them, any of them.
All right, well, we're going to, Stephanie, me, I'm going to get Randy and Hervé on board. We're going to pitch in and get you the Real Housewives birthday greeting. Or it might just be all of us dressed up as the Real Housewives. So you'll have to wait and see.
You work it, I'm sure.
Okay, well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Travis Peters-Hagen from Microsoft. Travis, why don't you tell everyone what you do at Microsoft and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Travis. I am the Director of Digital Experience at Microsoft for Events, Studios, and Community. So that is basically Microsoft's internal production arm as well as events team. And so we put on all of the company's flagship events, including our recent ones, the Microsoft Business Application Summit, Microsoft Build, and we'll be heading into Inspire, which is our partner conference, and Ignite in the fall.
Travis, we would love to hear more about those events and what you do around them.
What we found lately is that when you're going to an all digital experience, an all virtual experience, you can't just translate the in-person experience to online. You have to completely reinvent it. And so the work we've been really putting into our efforts lately is how do we deliver those big events? How do we understand the medium we're in, realize that you're only a couple hundred pixels away from the door, and so it's not the same as being an in-person audience, being a captive audience, and frankly, the experiences you can deliver are not even identical. So how do we really translate what we're doing and just reinvent the experience from the ground up to really lend itself to the digital way we're consuming it?
What are the key factors that make it an extraordinary virtual experience?
Really, it comes down to what is the content experience? What is the speaker experience? What does the storytelling look like? And I think people kind of skip by that step when it's probably the most important one. And so really, we put a lot of effort in how do we just adjust the content for the medium? And in a lot of ways, that means making it tighter, making it shorter segments while still getting that important content out there. Recognizing that people are multitasking. Right now, people are probably doing email or doing other things. So is there a way to commandeer that behavior? Can we be sharing more information about our topic with you through the chat panels or through other methods so that, yeah, that is natural behavior, but can that be about this topic so that you're going deeper with us and not kind of stepping away from us? And really just also recognizing that I think there's this thinking of, well, digital is a colder medium and that we're further away. When in actuality, as we sit here today, I feel like I'm a couple feet from you. I'm not sitting in the back of an auditorium. I feel closer to you than I probably ever have in a different environment. So how do you take advantage of that and make sure that you're treating the camera as that audience, as opposed to feeling like you're just kind of talking into a monitor?
To flip that then, what are things that people listening in should avoid? Do you have an example of like, oh, this was a terrible experience? What are those big factors that like, hey, I got to put on a virtual experience for my brand. I got to make sure I don't do this, this, and this.
I feel strongly that the efforts I sometimes see in this space to try and recreate what you see in an in-person event online is misguided. So when I think about the events that have a snapshot of a large conference space, and you can click into the auditorium or head off into the expo floor, and then there's booths. I think the more we try to obfuscate the fact that we're in this digital environment by making it appear like you're not, I think is the more we miss the mark on the advantages we can take of the new digital form. I think of if Netflix just put up a shelf of video boxes the way a video store did, I think it'd be an entirely different adoption rate on that platform. So I think people really have to get out of the mindset of how do I make this online thing feel like in person and really get to the point of this is a whole new environment. We have all new capabilities. Let's start fresh.
Hello, and welcome to the live session of our Event Virtualization Summit. It's our pleasure to have you here, and all of our wonderful panelists will be taking your questions. But first, real quick, our thanks to MadCon NYC, our partners and collaborators on this, to Proper Expressions, our marketing agency, and to MoDev for doing all the great video production to make this so live and snappy. And without further ado, Carlos, you want to take our first question? Oh, so I think the first question,
sorry everyone,
Joey, is for you, Joey. What is the NBA going to be doing to continue to create global impact as you go back to live? Especially, I think the audience is thinking in this world of questions around diversity, questions around equality. You know, the NBA has such a presence and such a voice in that space.
Yeah, I think we've certainly made the commitment that our restart is going to be grounded in social justice and social justice reform. And so you will find that we are making an incredible commitment, and every touch point that the NBA is going to have in its restart is going to come through in that lens. And that's obviously so important to our players. That's so important to our league, and our values are deeply rooted in social justice. And I would also say that our fans, we have an incredibly young fan base, and we have an incredibly diverse fan base. And so not taking on these issues and talking about them and making an even bigger commitment in the league would be inauthentic to who we are, and certainly inauthentic to who our players are. And so I can promise you that at every touch point we've talked about coming back as a league is going to, we're going to use the platform that's given to us by our great partners. And in coming back in Orlando, having all 22 of our teams in one place, we haven't had before, the incredible talent in one place, that's going to give us a truly unique ability to be able to have an even bigger impact. And we're incredibly excited for that. And I think that's what right now gets me up with so much energy and excitement about the NBA restart, is that we're going to have in one place all of this talent. And we think what a great opportunity to make an even bigger impact in a space that is so meaningful to so many. So we're really excited about it.
And Shelley, given what you do in the female quotient, would love to have you chime in on your perspective of the role of events, the role of these virtual experiences of bringing people together to talk on this as well.
Listen, I think that every moment is a moment of engagement. And in particular, right now, we all want to feel connected. We talk about social distancing. I think we're physically distanced, but more socially connected than ever before. And as Joey said, it's also our opportunity to move from conversation to action in everything we all do, from gender justice, racial justice, social justice, and creating, not waiting for a new normal or to return to what we were, but truly to create a better, more equitable normal. And I think that's what we're going to start seeing. Joey talked about a restart, a reset. If you want to, create change, you have to close the door of what's not working and, open the new one of, the world we all want to live in. So I think this is an opportunity for all of us to create better and craft what better looks like. We have that pause moment, to move forward.
And thanks for that, Shelley, and thanks for that, Joey. We've got another question that has just come in, and I'd like to start with Travis, but I'd like to get kind of everyone's input on this one. The person asked, experiential as an experience was getting big in live events. How can we create the experiential now that we're going virtual? How can you get that true? I know that some of you will have already touched upon this, but how can you get that true experiential feel when you have a virtual only event? I'll start with Travis on that.
Well, I just say, we're all learning. So I think over the next several months, we're going to see a lot of different techniques used and experimented with. So, the sky's the limit on probably what's possible here. But I think it's important to realize we're not just we're not just more digital strategy. We're not just more content to be consumed on the internet. I think it's important to create an environment where you can kind of feel the energy around you, the other parts of your community being engaged and energized, being able to communicate two-way with your audience, to enable your audience to communicate with each other, and to provide experiences at a moment in time where audiences can come together and participate and network with each other and feel closer to the attendees. So I think it's more about just recognizing that this is not just another media content distribution system. These are points in time where we're bringing together communities and we're trying to feel inspired and connected. And all of the different technologies we can kind of string together to enable those experiences while still recognizing that people have a finite amount of time and distractions in the worlds they're living with. I think there's quite a number of different ways to think about that. And I think over the next several months, people are going to get more and more creative in doing that.
Carlos, can I come in on that? Yeah, so just to, I think it's a really good question. Thanks for asking on the experiential bit. So we run the FT Weekend Festival, which is our consumer-facing festival, which we would normally run in a lovely park in North London, and it gathers 4,000 people, and we have music, and we have barbecues, and we have a great experience. And we've decided to run that digitally this year for obvious reasons, and recreating that experiential element online is difficult, right? And so, but what we are tasking our production company to do is to come up with I keep saying it's very difficult to recreate three-dimensionality online, but we got to push ourselves. So for example, we are going to do a live feed from the British Museum where we're going to walk through a piece of the British Museum and some of their art installations live onto the event. And so we're not going to have people necessarily always sitting at home or at their desks. We are going to create a live cooking demonstration. We are going to do a live wine tasting. We are considering pre-sending some physical kit to some of our registrants before the event. We are thinking about doing some live music. And so while it's not easy to recreate that experiential element online, there are things you can do to make it happen. So I hope that helps a little bit with our thinking.
Yeah, I think wherever you can get I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add one item to that. I am very supportive, Orson, of the idea of sending something ahead. I think if the budget is there, it's a very, very cool way to get your audience not only excited, but engaged in the activity of preparing for the event with you. So annually, YouTube holds our big customer-facing event talking about what's going on, what's new for the coming year. And typically it's at Radio City Music Hall. It's this big, exciting event, very flashy. And obviously that couldn't happen this year. So not only did we take it and shorten it to a 20-minute segment, but we also sent all attendees a box that arrived the day before. And everyone was asked, if they so chose to do so, to bake their own pizza. And we provided all the ingredients. And then they could take that pizza and sit down and enjoy the experience with us. So we found that received good feedback and made it an experiential moment, even though everyone was sitting on their couch watching on their TV screen instead of together in a big hall.
Yeah, I would also think that we should challenge ourselves to, when we think about the word experiential, what experiences were we not able to offer live that we now can offer given these mediums? And I'll give a perfect example for us is that we're going to now play all of our games without fans in the arena. And of course, right, there's a part of the experience that is lost without fans. But there's also an experience for those at home that's gained. And so we think about something like audio. We can now hear the players in a way we never could before. Our great partners actually at Microsoft and Google are doing incredible work with us. And I can promise you that we are going to produce a better home watching experience than we ever had with fans in the arena, in part because of our great partners and the technologies we're going to bring, but also because we started with the question of, yes, the experience is what makes live events so special. But what are the challenges we had experientially that now become these new opportunities? And so by taking, I think, from a different angle, we've gone back and said, what would the person at home want to do? What could they do with lighting? What could they do with audio that would be disruptive during a live event, but no longer is disruptive now that fans aren't in the arena? And I think that approach is, my hope is going to lead to some really cool viewership opportunities in the weeks ahead for us at the NBA.
I love this point of seeing not just what we're losing, but also what we're gaining. Shelley, you had some really good insights on this as well.
Well, I just wanted to add on that I think that virtual will become a new and. It was an or in this pivot moment. We had to migrate from the physical real life experiences now to the virtual experiences. And I think with every crisis comes the most innovation and most creativity. And as Orson said, I mean, who would, you know how hard it would be to schedule a whole big crowd in a museum, but now you can give people that opportunity to come in, or from access. We have global access in ways we never had before. I'm sure all of your audiences are expanding instead of shrinking because you have this opportunity to open the door to so many more. The other thing, just Michael, to your point, we're finding that bits and bytes of content. No one wants to sit like virtual where you have that physical connection and networking and business card, trade-offs. Online, it's a very different experience, and you also have to cater to that experience. As people are sitting in their homes on Zoom all day, I find that long conversations, especially when you can't just imagine you're the only one engaging with consumers, the short TED-like talks, if it's going to be a focused presentation, or half an hour with conversation so that the audience can engage like we're doing now, or an hour with audience participation and engagement, works very well. So I think that there is a silver lining where we're finding these new opportunities to engage in ways we never did before. And I love the pizza idea. That sounds perfect. I'll take one.
Yeah, we got another question for you, Shelley. What's the happy medium? And we'd love to hear other thoughts on this as well for length of digital panel conversations. Stephanie, you brought it up as well, but let's start off with Shelley here. Like, how do you create the right size content? I've been thinking a lot about sitcom versus drama, right? 30 minutes versus an hour versus movie, where you're going to sit down for 2 or 3 hours. And how do you think about what the goal is, what the audience is, and how long it should be?
It depends what it is. So, we've programmed at the Female Quotient over 170, plus conversations, and they all vary. We do 15-minute mindset moments, which are just inspirational and deep breath. We also do unscripted series on LinkedIn Live, which are also 15 minutes. That's one-on-one. We also do half an hour conversations with a couple of conversationalists, and then we do recaps to follow, so that they are not just conversation, but they're quality hacks. They're action oriented bites of what to take away. And then we also do 2-hour programming, but if we do 2 hour, we have palate cleansers in between that are all inspirational, moments that give you the goosebumps, and there are those lean in moments. So it really depends. But I think if it's a linear conversation, I think everyone needs to be seen so that you can play off each other, because physical cues are very different than what we all have to do through Zoom. I think half an hour is a good length, with 10 to 15 minutes of engaging the audience.
Thanks for that one,
I think
Shelley.
it's a great point. We've been thinking a lot about how to make something the right length. But I love your point at like 15 minutes. It can be incredibly punchy and very impactful. But on that global audience, the bigger audience, Orson, how do you think about? You've done these huge audiences and growing your global reach, I assume. How do you think about making the people feel special as they engage that? How do you think about making the people feel like that's something personal for them?
Yeah, good question, Michael, because obviously the digital model is very attractive for event organizers, because I think I've mentioned at the beginning, we have infinite inventory that we can sell at close to zero marginal cost, right? So the economics of it are quite exciting. And so the temptation is to go wide and big and get lots of big numbers in. But you run a risk of losing that personal feel, right? We are experimenting with our second iteration of the Global Boardroom of bringing in some extra tiers in terms of personalization, and have closer contact with some of our journalists. One of the biggest requests we get is, how can I get access to some of your top journalists and spend some time with them? And so we are thinking of some models, access models, where a select number of our audience participants can essentially upgrade to have a better, more personalized experience, really. And so at the end of the day, we run events on a commercial basis. And so if we can bring more value and also commercialize some of the experience, it's kind of a win-win for all, really.
And I guess I'd just jump in there really quick to say that we've kind of been playing with sort of a follow the sun model, knowing that we have an opportunity for this global reach, but we still want it to feel somewhat personalized to the individuals. We've created kind of that telethon mode where we start in the US hours and then we move across the globe. And as we do so, we kind of change the focus areas and how we structure the content or who's presenting the content to kind of map properly to the audiences in those regions. And so we're still kind of working out what works well and how to optimize that, but really being mindful of what time of day it is, who's attending at different parts, what those audiences care about, and how to really speak to those individuals and participate with those individuals as we move around the sun has been an important area of focus for us.
One more thing I'll add in this space is that the concept of geography allows people who never in a million years would have been able to attend certain events to be present. So one of my most memorable items is, I was sharing this with Carlos and Michael earlier, but the idea that I'm part of a women's organization, and we used to have one event a month about where we'd all get together in person and hear about a woman's career from start to where she is now. And typically 40 or 50 people in a room. I'm based in Chicago, so everyone was in Chicago. And they couldn't happen that frequently because asking people to leave their home, travel to the location, sit for an hour, and then get to work in time is tough. Now the organization runs every Tuesday and every Thursday. There's a conversation with a different woman, and anyone from all over the country can join. I mean, arguably all over the globe. So it's really about access and reach in a totally different way.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. We had another question come in, and actually, Joey, I'd like to start with you on this one. How are you handling analytics with these virtual events? We're potentially getting some different kinds of data in having these virtual experiences. Is what kind of data points are you looking for, and how are you taking action upon that?
Yeah, I certainly think we're all experiencing where we've got an opportunity to drive viewership numbers in a way that we may not have had otherwise, as we just mentioned with global access and not being limited by physical geography. But I think the real challenge still comes down to how can we drive lifetime value for our brands and our businesses with this access. And so as we think about what Orson and others were just talking about, as we think about experiential exclusivity, one of my things I talk to my team about all the time. How can we take a customer or a fan and deliver them the exact types of experiences at the price points that make sense for them? And so as we try to engage, and I think we have this unique opportunity to be able to increase our funnel, our leads. We also have to be very clear that I think that sort of one size fit all has never worked. And it hasn't worked when we produce live events, and so it certainly doesn't work from just now we've taken live event to virtual. And so yes, there may be a low barrier of entry on the front end, but we've got to know our customers, and we've got to use the insight tools that we have at our fingertips to very quickly move them from something that's available to everyone to something that's unique to their particular interests. And I think that becomes the challenge. And so whether we think about unique product drops that can go through virtual events or access ticketed experiences, we all want to feel special, right? We all sit here and say that that's the thing. I want you to know about me, and I want you to make me feel like I'm different than everyone else who likes this brand. And so very quickly, I think we can become clouded in this space if we're focused just on top line viewership numbers and not thinking about how do we take that viewer up the affinity channel.
I wanted to jump in with us. We have a Women in the Business of Sports program every Wednesday. I co-host with Stephanie McMahon, the Chief Brand Officer of WWE, and we feature, women in, on the court and off the court, across all sports, and we have tens of thousands of people tuning in. We do it concurrently. So we have Zoom Live and then LinkedIn Live and Facebook Live, but then it lives on and becomes part of the content library. And as Stephanie talked about, we are featuring, women in the business of sports, and also the players. And it's just such a great opportunity where, people viewing can watch live or at their leisure, as you said, pick and choose, when they want to see it. But we keep the show every Wednesday in the morning, same time, so that it is building, the audience and really profiling different women across the board. And so our engagement in analytics really is, who's watching, but also making sure that people can access when and where and how they want it. And we have little snapshots. So if you don't want to watch the whole half an hour, we have little snippets, but also the full program.
Carlos, on the analytics, I just want to jump in. I think it was a really good question. Hopefully I can tie it in with the sponsorship question as well. And so, what we're seeing is that big numbers are good, but our commercial partners want the detail, right? They want the granularity of who is watching, when are they watching, what sessions are they watching, and ultimately are these potential customers, right? And so very quickly you will see that commercial partners will become more and more demanding, and they will focus less on big numbers, more on quality of audiences. And the answer to that is in the what platform, tech platform do you choose to use? We haven't spoken about tech platforms. It's a hot topic at the moment, and depending on what you use, you get different types of analytics, right? And so I think today we're broadcasting on YouTube, and you will get some sort of analytics, but other digital event environments will give you more granular analytics. By the way, Shelley, I love the way that you broadcast on multiple platforms at the same time. I think that's really clever. But yeah, we're on to the question of platforms now, and depending on what you choose, you can get lots of different information.
Yeah, our YouTube library also is remarkable, and we built up, we never thought that our content was going to become so important, and YouTube has been an incredible platform for us to store all of our content.
Correct, because there's the big issue of VOD, right? Where do you put it? Where do you place it? A lot of this stuff takes up a lot of space, virtual space. You can't just
go to YouTube.
Yeah, you can't just plonk it on any website, right? And so people like YouTube are really quick, easy, more or less cost-free solutions. And then you get into the pay-to-play kind of solutions. And so there's lots out there. And as we know, we've all been tackling the platform issue over the past few weeks.
You brought up the topic of sponsorship and your business partners and their demands in analytics. I'd love to hear, and our audience is bringing it up a lot, how do you treat sponsors in this? Clearly, if you're going to create a great experience, it's probably not free. If you're going to mail something to people, it's probably not free. So how do you attract sponsors, engage them? What's the value proposition they're getting? Joe, you want to kick us off on that? I mean, obviously the MBA is kind of in its own, is a unique category there, but we'd love for you to kick us off. Would love to get a few people to speak to this. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I think the start is recognizing this has been a difficult time for all of us and our partners as well. And so I think there was this mad dash in the beginning to just get up content, get up a virtual event as sort of a make good for our partners. And to me, I think that probably set us off. I understand why there was such a rush as the world was changing so rapidly, but it probably put the virtual event in a difficult position, and one that we've got to sort of crawl back. And I think it very much starts with when we're accessing our partners, why were they engaged with us in the first place? What were they looking to, and who were they looking to reach? And then organizing and creating for that particular partner. We have to sort of start over with our partners and decide how best to leverage their assets and how best to showcase the relationships and the strengths of the relationships through a virtual event. And there was a lot of reasons that live events make sense for certain partners that actually they may not anymore. And there may be new partners that now are interested in what a virtual event can offer. And I don't think it has to be as simple as, well, you know what, if you had this live event, now if we just take it virtual, you get that same thing. I think that has complicated a lot of the relationships in a way that has certainly, I think, has made for some conversations that require some nuance as we continue to sort of push forward on this.
And I think I would just add to that. I totally agree with that sentiment. We're thinking about the same thing. So we took a pause for a moment when we started to transition to virtual. We wanted to make sure we could do virtual in a way that provided value to sponsors, and we didn't want to just assume and do the wrong thing. And so we're starting to, now that we sort of know the path we're on, we're starting to revisit that and explore it. But it's also really critical too that we look at what is the value to the attendee of those sponsorship relationships. So we want to make sure that you know, in a virtual environment especially, but anytime, that if a sponsor is engaging, that experience is of value to the attendees, that we're reinforcing the overall event experience with those sponsorships and the way we are positioning that content, as opposed to just being a, you know, revenue generating function.
Orson, you had something you wanted to add on that one?
Yeah, listen, I mean, you know, we've got an amazing brand, and so a lot of our commercial partners want to align themselves with us from a thought leadership point of view. And so that still works in a digital environment in terms of either speaking or moderating some of our discussions. But we're finding that the sponsorship is kind of holding up quite well, because we're able to access global audiences, and the reality is the numbers are just bigger. So the numbers are bigger and the audiences are global. And so from a bang for their buck ROI point of view, it's very hard for them to argue that the digital experience isn't as strong when you're delivering 4 or 5, in some cases 10 times the numbers that they were getting in a live environment. And then because of the analytics, we're giving them a really granular, really powerful data and information about their potential customers. Where are they? Where are they from? How do they behave? What have they been watching? And so, and lastly, we've been able to tap into different budgets, right? So, you know, everyone shut their budgets down for physical events, and suddenly digital events seem to fall in kind of other weird kind of budgets, and they fall in advertising budgets, not in live budgets. And so, you know, we've kind of found workarounds where people do have money to spend on digital experiences that necessarily aren't opening up on if you were to go to them with a live proposition, right? And so we're feeling quite positive, and the feedback we're getting from our commercial partners is that, you know, they're getting quite strong ROI from these experiences.
Orson, as you were talking, I was thinking, what if in the digital experience we changed the name, a new lexicon from sponsorship to engagementship or experience-ship or something, like, because really, you know, from brand, it's the brand engagement with the audience in a way we never had before. And we just talked about, it's not just migrating content from, you know, live to virtual, screen to screen, big, little. It really is a whole different level of brand engagement. And, you know, so I'm just wondering if we change the name from sponsorship and digital to something else that reflects what we're all talking about, because it is about this customization, personalization, you know, big access, but, you know, really everyone finding, you know, what they want from it. So I don't know. I think we should think about that.
I completely agree. I think you're absolutely onto something there. One of the other questions that came through the chat was, do we find that people are spending more time networking or consuming content in these events? And I mentioned this in the first half, but I think that the networking piece, that the viewer to viewer engagement piece is still a completely missing. I mean, it's not completely missing. We have chat boxes, we have ways to start to interact, hand raises, things like that. But I think it's a space that is ripe for innovation. And that could very well come from those brands who want to engage, who first may offer a space for consumers to engage with each other, and provide that resource, provide that innovation, provide that technology, because it's absolutely a missing piece in the digital event landscape right now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to chime in on that, Stephanie. What we've seen with Ingo is that we've now done a few thousand of these virtual events, and typically they're getting 30 to 40% of people showing up. And when you start showing people that their connections are going, you create an urgency, because you see, oh, if Shelly's going to be there, Joey's going to be there, Travis is going to be there, and Stephanie's going to be there, I want to be there live also. I can't just
Don't forget Orson.
If
Orson's going to be there.
If Orson's going to be there and Carlos is going to be there also, and not to mention our friends at Modev, if those people are going to be there, I was going to say, then I also want to invite Orson, by the way. But it's really this great effect of, if there are great people going to be there, then I have to be there live, and then I can't just hope to show up later. So I think you're totally right. I think there's a ton to unlock around networking.
We got the Ingo plug, but it is a great product and I love it. So well done, Michael. You got it in there. But I think it raises a really good question.
Thanks, Orson.
Because a really good issue, Stephanie. So the holy grail is, how do we recreate that networking, deal making, business development that we used to have in those hotel lobbies? How do we create that digitally? And the platforms that can recreate that as much as possible are the ones that are going to be more successful, right? And so some of you might have seen yesterday in the news, Michael, you would have probably seen one of the most up and coming digital event platforms the other day raised another $40 million, and they had Salesforce as one of the investors in their round. And they dabble with trying to recreate that environment with some successes. I think there's still development to be done, but if whoever can crack that to an extent cracks the holy grail, because it then offers event organizers a way of a pricing power, right? So we know that charging people for digital experiences is tough, and the closer we can recreate that business development value online, the more we can leverage our pricing power. So that's all in development, I guess, and that's all to be seen.
Yep, I completely agree. I think that if you look at the survey results we've seen, it's all about content and networking, right? Like everything everybody says, the value of going to a conference is content and networking. So figuring out that the content's getting better and better, the biggest gap does seem to be around networking. Great point, Stephanie. Carlos, before we wrap up.
Yes, well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you to our amazing panelists. For myself, from MadCon NYC, which we recently transitioned to all virtual in December. While we have some really, really fantastic ideas, I've certainly picked up a lot of absolutely incredibly valuable information from all of our panelists. So thank you for that. Thank you to Michael for having Ingo do this in collaboration with us. And I'm sure the audience as well. Great questions, by the way, for all the registrants. Thank you for sending those in. And I hope everyone, bringing it full circle to what we're talking about, found some really, really fantastic content. And now that we can use Ingo and LinkedIn, I'm sure we'll all network with each other. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And my thanks to everybody as well. We'll do, don't forget, check out MadCon NYC for their future events. They're great. They host some really excellent people, not to mention Female Quotient, Financial Times. I hope everybody gets to see the MBA as they relaunch and attend some Microsoft events and some Google events. Ingo will be, my big takeaways were that you should keep it simple, focus on the audience and what they really want, find content that satisfies them, look for inspiration everywhere, make sure to bring in a diverse audience. And one of my favorite points was, make me believe. What is it that's going to make me believe in your event? I think that's a great question that came out of this. Again, our thanks to the entire audience for attending. We really appreciate your time, your questions, your input. Feel free to shoot us a note and give us some feedback on what you'd want to see in future episodes. And we look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.